This week's question of the week is, why don't I do an open mat, I don't know, once or twice a week or whatever, and open it up to everybody in the San Antonio area to come train if they want to on an open mat and train with my students? And that was a good question, so I'm going to tackle that as this week's question of the week. I'm al-Aziz, the owner and head instructor of Semper Fortis Jiu Jitsu here in San Antonio, Texas, and I'll be tackling this week's question of the week. So, why don't I do it? And there's several reasons why I don't think it's a good idea. I know some schools in town, and really across the country, across the world, they do it, and it's part of their marketing plan, works for them. And what I mean by that is they do a weekly open mat. They invite everybody in town, all schools and affiliations are welcome to come train with us, no mat fee, or maybe they have a mat fee, whatever they have. And then people come there, they train, and then the owner of the school or some of the instructors will sort of try to recruit those people that come. I remember several years ago I lost a purple belt who used to go to these open mats to one of the schools in town. And they basically said, hey, Saad's holding you back, come over here, we'll promote you to brown belt. Or, whatever words they said. He sent me like this long 5-paragraph Facebook message saying, hey, I'm going over here because you're holding me back. And they immediately promoted him to brown belt. And it's like, good for both of y'all. Hope y'all are happy. But I don't do that. One, because my ideal student is the prospective white belt, the person that's not doing jiu-jitsu. That's my target audience where I put my resources. Two, I want people, if you're training at another school in town, I want you to stay there. Be loyal to your school and your instructor. As long as that's a good place for you, I'm not here to judge it, whether it's good or bad for you. But if it's a good place for you, stay there. I'm not trying to recruit you to come here. So I don't do that. I don't try to recruit other people's students. The other reason I don't do it is I like looking myself in the mirror and seeing who I am. It's like, I like the person I am, and I don't want to be that grimy guy. So I don't try to recruit other people's students. And these open mats for all affiliations, not to say every school that does it, that's their intention. But many of them, it's part of their marketing plan. And I've seen people across the country, really across the world, take that strategy, and, I hope it works for them. The other reason, because what I do at my school, like I said, everybody does jiu-jitsu differently, runs their school the way they see fit, is I do an open mat after every single class that I teach you. I teach a 1-hour class, and then my students are welcome to stick around and roll, spar, train, and they do so for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, sometimes longer after class, and that works for them. And it works for me because, one, I can judge the person who is training because he went through the class. I can watch them, monitor them, because one of my big things here is I want everybody to be safe. I want everybody that walks into my school healthy, to train hard, train smart, and leave healthy. And if I just allow random people to pop in, I don't have that security of knowing that my students' good health is going to be taken care of. So my students are welcome to bring guests, whether the guest is visiting from out of town, or whether the guest is even another student at another school in town, if they're friends. But then, I'm giving that student the eye, like, hey, you're vetting this person, saying, you're vouching, like, hey, you told them what our gym culture is, what our rules are. And because if they act a fool, I'm looking at you, bro. Like, hey, you brought this fool in here. So I do open mat after every class, but I don't do like an open mat. Just say, everybody in town, come train with me if you want to come train. It's like, I'm just not interested in that. What I do, I know that's terrible English probably. is I cross-train with other schools in town. Like, we've had GFT San Antonio come in here and train, and they bring not only their instructors, but, several students, and they'll train. We'll answer questions together. We'll share our knowledge. We'll spar, AKA rolling, and great training session. We're doing the same thing, I think, in a couple weeks with Six Blades San Antonio. One of my black belts just won a tournament this past weekend. Frankie, congratulations, bro. And one of the black belts that he defeated in the tournament was like, hey, I'd like to cross train with you guys sometimes. And it's like, yeah, bro, bring all your students. You can either come to our school, we'll come to your school, and like, as long as it's good people, you got good vibes, man, we'll cross train. So I like the idea of cross training, but I'm selective about who I'm going to do it with. Like, I like to know who's stepping into my doors, what they've been trained in, and like their understanding of jiu-jitsu and just our culture. Like, the culture of my school, and every school is different. Like, the culture of my school is when you roll with somebody in here, your number one objective is not getting the tap. Your number one objective is don't injure your training partner. That's what our number one objective is. And when you go to other schools, because through the military, every 2 or 3 years I was transferring, so I got to see a lot of different schools. Or I'd go TAD, and I'd train with a local school somewhere. That's not the culture at every school. There's a lot of schools you go to, it's like, man, you don't tap in time, they'll break your freaking arm. They'll fully crank the submission. You might not even know what you're in. And it's like, oh, now you just sustained a serious injury. So I like to know. I got a new blue belt that came in here. He transferred in the military, and he's rolling with me. And what I try to do, especially on their first roll, I like to give him a dominant position. So the young man, he had top side control on me, and it was so funny, but so cool at the same time. He's like, Professor, is it okay if I use a crossface on you? And I giggle because I'm like, yeah, bro. And don't call me professor, just call me Saad. I like to be called by my name. Because for 33 years in the US Navy, I was called either by my last name or my rank. So now that I'm retired from the Navy, it's like, man, I like to hear my first name. So I don't like being called professor. Other black belts do, and I'm not saying that it's wrong. It's just not my thing. So it made me giggle. I'm like, bro, yeah, go ahead, crossface me, do your thing. Because I like to see, like, hey, what kind of jiu-jitsu what kind of tactics do these guys use? And that I can judge how I'm going to guide their training. So it was a great addition to the school because I liked the question. Like, hey, I don't really know. Let me ask before I do it. And I think that's great. The other thing with open mats is, you might show up at an open mat with the attitude like, I'm just gonna get some training on, get a couple rolls, have a good time. But there's people that will show up to these open mats, and that's not what they're thinking. They're like, oh, I'm in tournament mode. I'm gonna, I'll even hear them say, oh, I'm gonna wear my colors, which whatever their school association is, and I'm gonna represent my team, and I'm gonna show, we got good jiu-jitsu. So that person's in tournament mode, and you are thinking, oh, I'm just in here training. And it's not a training session for them. It's like, this is a tournament for them. And injuries happen. Heck, man, like there's a popular video. If I was better than a white belt on social media, I'd cut and paste the video into this video so you could see it. But somebody let, the school owner let this purple belt come in and do, I guess it was an open mat at their school. And it was a pretty big, strong purple belt too. And they was rolling with one of the teenagers, i.e. a kid, maybe 14, 15, 16 years old. And the teenager hit him in a triangle. And this big purple belt lifts the teenager off the ground, slams his head into the mat, and knocks him unconscious. And it's like, wow, that just happened. Like, you would think, if a person's a purple belt, they know, like, you don't roll like that. Like, you don't roll like that. Just like you would think I wouldn't have to explain to a purple belt before they roll, like, hey, although, you know, in a street fight, there's punches and kicks and jiu-jitsu and elbows. We don't do that in here. You know, like, not when we roll. Like, you would think, like, you shouldn't have to explain that. But apparently, to this guy, and especially because he was doing it to, even worse, that he was doing it to a child. Like why? I don't understand. Why would you invite people in like that? Like, no. So I like to vet them. Like, if I know who your instructor is, it's like, yeah, you know, even if it's somebody in town and they just want to come in, hit a couple classes or whatever. Yeah, come on and train. Like, you know, I'm not charging you a mat fee or anything. Like, yeah, come train with my guys. But like, if I don't know a person, it's like, I want to check you out. I want to know where you're from before I unleash you upon my students to take an injury. You know, like, if you just want to compete with my students, cool. You know, show up at a local tournament, you can compete with my students. Or, you know, like, a lot of times we go to the Pan Ams or the IBF Master Worlds. One for my injury, I would have been competing this year. You know, because almost every year I go to the IBJJF Master Worlds and the Pan American Championships. But wasn't in the cards for me this year. But, you know, like, that's where we compete, and then it's like, oh, you know, like, we go at it. You know, but in here for training, what I want is people to progress, I want them to get better, and I don't want them to injure each other, you know? And so if I just invite the world in, I don't know what I'm getting. And so I don't do it. And then the person that asked the question, I saw there's a Facebook group, I think it's called San Antonio BJJ Community, or maybe it's San Antonio Jiu-Jitsu Community, something like that. And they was looking for open mats, and they had found one for Saturday and Sunday, but they was looking for some during the week. And I understand what they're getting at, which is they don't pay to train at any school. What they're looking at is to find open mats to where they can just go multiple times a week and basically just freeload and not pay tuition anywhere, and just, you know, train for free just at multiple schools. And that's your thing, but I'm not interested in supporting that. So that's my answer to this week's question of the week. Why don't I do open mats? It's because, hey, it's not how I recruit people. It's not part of my marketing strategy. Not interested in the risk injuries. And it's just not the kind of vibe I want. So that's the answer to this week's question of the week. If you got a question for next week, please feel free to fire below. Or if you got any insights on what I had to say, because I know some of y'all, especially social media warriors, be like, oh, you're wrong, or this, you should do this and that, or whatever you got to say. Feel free to comment below, like, dislike. If you hit the like button, cool. If you hit the dislike button, don't just hit it once, hit it twice. That way, I really know you dislike it. Okay, that's my dad joke for the day. All right, ciao, till next week.